Cool. Thanks, Taylor. Hi, everybody. All right, we're going to end this well. This is a panel called Climbing the Career Ladder, Moving from Junior to Mid-Level to Senior. And there are 4 amazing people on this stage that are going to share their stories with you about where they are in their career, how they got to where they are in their career, hopefully to give you all some tips as to how you can do the same too, no matter where you are. If you're a junior person, if you're a senior person, a mid-level person, a VP, an exec, we're going to talk about that. So let's get right into it. We don't have a lot of time, and we have a lot of information to share. So Natalie, I'll pass to you first. Can you tell everybody a little bit about who you are, introduce yourself, and a little bit of your career story, how you got to where you are?
Hey, everybody. I am Natalie Davis. I am a software engineer. I focus primarily on the front end, and I'm a career changer. I spent about 15 years in retail management before I decided to join a boot camp and become a software engineer, and been working for about 2.5 years in the industry now.
Hi, I'm Eileen Atkins. I'm an engineer tech lead on our design systems team at MailChimp, or Intuit MailChimp now. Similar to you, I also went through a boot camp through General Assembly. So in my previous career life, I was in accounting and moved over in 2017 and have been in the design system world since.
Hello, I'm Trisha Bell. I am currently a digital producer for a digital agency. I work primarily with Nike, and it's been interesting. I previously was a stay-at-home mom and entrepreneur, trying to kind of get it in where I fit in. And I transitioned into a mid-level position being a stay-at-home mom for 15 years. So I'm excited to be here.
Hey everyone, I'm Harley Quinn. Just kidding. My name's Gina. You might have been expecting to see my friend Mina up here. She couldn't make it. So you get a different Ina today. It's Gina. So I am a designer that codes. I've been in the industry for over 20 years. Earlier in my career, I worked at Apple and been at a lot of big companies like Salesforce, Amazon, most recently Google until the layoffs. But I've been designer, and then led the design systems team at Salesforce, and then at Google and Asana prior to that, I was a manager. And now for my next role, I'm thinking I want to just go back to being a senior designer again. So, yeah.
Awesome. Actually, we'll start with you, Gina. So the next question for all of you is, in the spectrum of intern to junior to mid-level to senior to VP to exec, where are you on that pathway? And maybe tell us a little bit about how you got to that place, what that actually means for you.
I guess I would say senior. I, in my previous role, was a manager, which I guess equates to senior. And I guess how I got there was just growing and learning in design systems and going from contributing to leading. And then my last 2 roles, they actually had hired me to come lead the teams that they had. So at Asana, it was a design systems design team. And at Google, it was a developer relations team for material design, which is their design system. So, yeah.
How I got to my mid-level position, prior, like I said, I was an entrepreneur. I worked primarily in the music industry, so I was doing a lot of project managing artists, artist management, brand management, literally doing all the things. And I think just, doing that for so long and putting that on my resume, I think it definitely helped me get into that mid-level position. I think I was, because I haven't worked in corporate, I only worked in corporate once with Booking.com, and I didn't feel like I was, I guess I didn't think I was qualified, but I was, and I'm grateful, to be where I am considering my background, so yeah.
So right now, my role is a senior software engineer at MailChimp. I started as a UX engineer. And like most, I think, bigger companies, sometimes it can be very political on how to move up. So for me, it was just maintaining control. I went to look for a matrix of how leveling worked. I talked to my manager in our one-on-ones to say, hey, where am I lacking? Where do I need opportunities to grow? And he helped me find those spaces. also looking at people who were levels above me and pairing with them very often. Those pairing partners soon became sponsors who actually reached out to my manager to help advocate for my promotion. So for like the biggest thing for me was just kind of taking control, having those relationships with people who were in levels where I wanted to go, to also help me get there.
All right, so I am currently CEO of I Need a Job, so if you're hiring, please check in with me. But when it comes to engineering, I'm mid-level. I entered as a junior engineer, and about 9 months, I made it to mid-level, and I think that happened so quickly because I'm always willing to be wrong. I constantly solicit feedback, and I work really hard.
So now that you know a bit about all of our panelists, we're going to open some questions up to the whole panel, and we'll also have some time for Q&A at the end of this. So for the last 5 minutes, if you all have questions for the folks up here about how they got to what they're doing, please do ask. We'll have some time for that. Kind of an open question to all of you, whoever wants to start. Can you tell us a little bit about the challenges facing you at any level? What challenges face if I'm a junior? What challenges do I have to face if I'm a mid-level person, if I'm a senior level person? And are those challenges the same across those levels, or are those challenges a little bit different depending on where you are on that career ladder? Anybody want to take that first?
All right, so I can only speak from junior to mid if I'm going to speak honestly. And I think they're actually opposite challenges. So as a junior, the challenges were very psychological. I was entering into a team of people who felt like geniuses to me, and I felt like I was the only one who didn't know anything. So I had to constantly battle what I was calling ego, but I think it was actually a fear of being the only one who didn't know any better. And I've seen that in other junior engineers, and it can get in your way, so please don't do that. And then as a mid-level engineer, I have the opposite challenge. I have skills now, and it's about gaining the confidence to be able to advocate for my ideas, or even just to propose a solution and just put myself out there like that.
I would say for me, my biggest challenge from mid-level to senior, I was never great at technical jargon. Still struggle. But I was in a place as a mid-level where I thought I was really good, I was doing great. Then I got put on a team with very senior staff plus engineers, and I'm like, oh, I am not where I thought I was. So the challenge for me was learning a little bit more technical jargon, learning how to create tech specs and document what I'm doing, the strategy of why I'm doing these things. But definitely getting that practice in was very helpful for me in terms of growing and learning more on a technical level.
I can speak to going from mid-level to senior because I'm in the process of advocating for myself to be a senior producer. And what I find challenging is, like you were saying, just having the confidence to advocate for myself. I've done a lot, and I have to sometimes refrain from overworking. But I know I've put in a lot of work at my the current company, and I think just trying to prove myself, okay, I did this, I did that. I'm struggling, but in talking with my direct manager, she assures me, she's like, I see you, and I think that's super helpful to have a manager who sees what you do and can affirm, what you're doing. So that is giving me more confidence to be like, okay, I'm ready for that, and I'm going to continue advocating until I get what I desire.
Yeah, I feel like there's always challenges. They just change as you progress. And so earlier in my career, it's trying to get people to actually trust that you know what you're doing, and that you keep up with things, the current way of doing things. But I think because you're new or you're early, people might not have as much trust. But then as you go, now you've got that trust, and now it's almost too much trust in you, because then it's all the expectations grow. And so when I look at, a lot of companies will have job ladders defined for each level, and you look at everything that they've got listed, and it's and design career, you also have to be a researcher and a business person, and there's like all these things that come with the job, and it's like, I thought I was just being a designer. And I feel like front-end development has a lot of expectations now that weren't around, like, even like a decade ago, and so things are constantly growing and expanding in what's expected of you. And so, yeah, and I feel like that's always gonna be at whatever level that you are at.
I think there's a couple of themes that all of you said in all of your answers that I want to pull out, kind of ask each of you about. Trisha, I'll start with you because you mentioned a couple things. In all of the answers, you all mentioned some level of like being qualified for things that I didn't think I was qualified for. And also the idea of advocacy, specifically self-advocacy, like being able to advocate for yourself in certain situations. Trisha, maybe start with you. How do you do that? How do you, like, are you just flexing all the time? Are you just, writing in Slack how great you are? Like, how does one advocate for themselves? What does that role look like?
That's an excellent question. I think it looks different for everybody, but for me, it's about being intentional about, I have to go back into my Rolodex and say, okay, I've done all these things, and even I haven't had to restate what I've done, but I am intentional with my coworkers, with just my team, in being known and asking the right questions, and saying all of these things so people, my managers, can see me, and that I think even with that they have stated, like, okay, you asked a great question, you brought up a great point, and I because I'm not one to flex. I hate doing that. I have to. It's easier for me to just ask those questions and be seen and heard in meetings and things like that. And so, yeah, I think maybe that's what kind of brings me out, or people notice me, or the managers notice me because I'm being intentional about doing that. Yeah, that's probably it.
You want to take that next?
Anyone?
Going on visibility a little bit, it is hard to like brag about yourself, but one thing that I found helpful is either being on high impact jobs or tasks or projects, or something that's very visible. So thinking about, okay, like, what am I good at? For me, I was thinking around accessibility. It wasn't very much a big thing at the company. Not many people were knew much about it. So I thought, okay, this is a great opportunity to maybe build something that will work, at least in the front end space, because there's a lack of knowledge. So like taking ownership on starting our accessibility guidelines, or taking ownership on starting to build in accessible checks and things like that within our components in our design system. And so that naturally brought out visibility and people seeing what you're doing for your team or your project without having to necessarily brag, but your work is doing it for you.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's something that I still struggle with a lot. It is really hard for me to be like, hey, I'm super amazing and you should know that. But what I try to do is I try to put myself in a position where other people will do that for me. So there's, pairing on tasks and kind of, especially if I can help someone else grow in the process, so I can give them some information, I can give them a way to tackle it, and then they're in Slack singing my praises, and we've both won.
Take that from Natalie, so a follow-up question for you on that. Can you talk more about how to get other people to advocate for you? Like what tips, what tricks do you have? Because self-advocacy is something that I think is important, especially in the workplace, just to get people to notice you, like we're all saying. How do you get someone else to do that? Because it's great when somebody else does it, because that way, it's weird when it feels like we're bragging about ourselves. It's much more helpful when it feels like other people are bragging about us. Any tips or tricks on how to get other people to advocate for you?
So first, of course, you need to be technically strong. You need to know what you're talking about. But I think back to my boot camp days, and I had a wonderful team lead, and one of the things he really impressed upon me was that I needed to be the engineer that other people wanted to work with. And that meant working empathetically. That meant being kind. That meant making space for other people. That meant letting other people know it's okay not to know everything, but we can figure this out together. And then actually following through and doing the work together, so that it's just like, who doesn't want to let everyone know, oh my God, Dan helped me with this thing. He taught me this. It was so cool. I didn't even know you could do that. It's natural that way.
An idea that I borrowed from Sarah Drasner, who's at this event, when I was managing, was giving space for bragging in one-on-ones. And if your manager's not doing that, you can like make your own space and just start your one-on-one with your manager, bragging on yourself, and documenting that so you have a collection of all your brags. I found that really helpful, both as a manager as well as an individual contributor. In addition to that, one thing I find really fun is if you have like teammates that you have a good rapport with, and creating this culture of like giving each other kudos. My team at Asana, we had this little stuffed animal, and like you would have the stuffed animal for the period of time that you were like, you know, the person on the team that did something really cool, and whoever has it then passes it to the next person. And so, you know, again, if your manager's not doing that, you can just self-organize and do that yourself, and it gives you all the opportunity to brag on each other.
Definitely shout out to the brag doc. Like, write it down. You won't forget. You won't remember.
All right, we're close to the end of our time, so we'll end with one last question. What is it that juniors can do to help themselves, but also help others? I think a lot of people who are specifically in a junior role think like, I need a lot of help, which is sometimes true, and sometimes forget that like, but I can also help others too. I have something that I can offer. So what is it that junior folks can do to help themselves and others? What is it that mid-level folks can do to help themselves and others? And then same thing with senior folks. And I think the expectation is also flipped, you know, Gina, as you were saying on the other side, that if you're senior, you got to be helping everybody. You can't do anything for yourself. It's got to be all give, and that's probably off balance as well. So what are some things, you know, how do you keep that balance of helping yourself and helping others? And then we'll break for some questions from the audience too.
I can start from a junior level, pair, like as an engineer, pair with like all types of levels. You'll be surprised what you learn, and you'll be surprised at what you're good at too. Like you'll start to figure out like, wow, I'm really good at X, Y, and Z. I worked with a like staff member who maybe wasn't as great in CSS or accessibility, but I was, and he would ask me questions, right? And it's okay, like going into senior level, it's also okay to be humble. Like it's okay if you don't know things and to ask questions, and give people opportunity to also shine. So like if you're now in a senior or up level, like give a junior or mid-level the opportunity to shine and say, okay, I know how this person works. They're accountable. They can, you know, work through whatever they have and present their deliverables. Let me give them this opportunity to take leadership on this project and show the team or show the department what they can do. So giving back in both ways.
When it comes to junior, I say definitely ask your questions. You may feel silly, but not only are you going to get an answer, but you may get someone who has been doing a certain thing for so long that they're almost on autopilot with it, to think about it a different way. There are new ways to do things coming out every day, so ask your questions, certainly. When it comes to mid-level, I say share your hard lessons. I have a good friend who is just in her first engineering role, and if you remember how that feels, it's all so different than when you were learning. So I shared the practice of when you're assigned a task that feels over job to you, it's okay to raise that concern, but raise that concern with, this is how I think I would approach it, write out some skeleton code, share it. So just let others learn from your mistakes, and then when it comes to senior, I will let you know in a year or two.
One thing I've found helpful in my career is identifying somebody who would be your mentor, and ideally someone at a higher level than you. Because then as that person is meeting with you, they're seeing your work and, you know, not just giving you guidance, but then they actually become your advocate. And when they're talking to other leaders, you'll probably come up because they will probably have just met with you recently. And so I found, finding a mentor is super helpful.
I would say become an expert in whatever, you know, your field is. I've learned to become an expert in, we work in different studios, so the studio that I work for, I'm becoming an expert because I've been doing it so much. And so that, and helping others who are new, training others. I think that's definitely helped me stand out a bit more and allow my manager to consider, okay, I see you're doing this, this, and that. Let's work on getting you to this level. So, yeah.
Awesome. There's so much wisdom and knowledge on this stage. We have a few minutes left here. Does anybody in the audience have a question about career development? Yeah, in the back. Yeah. So the question is, are there people who don't know that they are mentors? Is that right? Yeah. Anybody want to tackle that?
Everyone is my mentor, and I don't care if they know it or not. You've got something to teach me. I want it. And I want to caution against like the formal, will you be my mentor? I don't know that that works out. Yeah. Make a connection with someone.
Yeah. I agree. I tend to, if I see somebody that knows more than me, I'm like, I want to, because it's just my personality. Like, I just want to know more. Like, tell me, how did you get here, It's really about humbling yourself, because that's not easy. You know what I mean? When you're in a high position, you have a high role, it's like, I don't know if I feel like no, humble yourself and find the people that know more than you do.
Awesome. Any question here?
What's the best piece of career advice you've ever gotten, and what's the worst piece of career advice?
The best I got, shout out to Mark, it's only hard until you do it.
Wow. That's good. That's great.
The worst, I don't know, because like if you say something really unreasonable to me, I'm gonna let it go in one ear and out the other.
Yeah. Anybody else? Best career advice? Worst career advice?
I'm having a hard time remembering best, but I do remember worst because that's usually easier. I had a manager that always tried to tell people to always say we and not me, but that kind of goes against the advocating for yourself. And if you're always saying we, then no one knows what you're doing. So I would not do that.
I don't know if it was like necessarily giving advice. There was a staff engineer that I worked with like day one on a project. And like by the end of the day, he like sends me this matrix for like engineering leveling. He's like, here, you need to like look at this, see where you're at, and work on the things that you feel like you're not doing well in. I was like, this is day one. I don't even know you. But what he was really just doing was making sure that like I knew that this was here. Here are ways for me to grow if I want to grow, because my manager didn't share this with me. My immediate teammates didn't share this with me. I didn't know it existed. And here he was like trying to help me level up, and he didn't mean it by like, in any rude way, but it was just so funny how abrupt it came up. But it was like that thing that was just to, hey, like you need to advocate for yourself. You need to take control of your career in an indirect way.
CYA. Now, I know that's like real general, but I did not realize that if I did not cover my behind, that somebody else would try to like say that I did X, Y, Z, ABC. No, you will not get that privilege. I will make sure that it is known that I did A, B, and C. You know what I'm saying? So that, for me, huge, very huge.
I love it. That's our time. That's a great place to end. Thank you all. Thank you all for listening, being a great audience. Appreciate it.